everyone. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time joining one of our live streams, let me go ahead and introduce us. We are the kind of the executive staff here at Soulbound Studios, working on the massively multiplayer, or let me correct that term, the multiplayer evolving online world, Chronicles of Elyria. Like I said, if this is your first time joining us, a quick introduction. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I'm the owner and game director at Soulbound Studios, working on Chronicles of Elyria. To my left directly, we have Adam Maxwell, lead designer and potentially soon creative director for the studio for the same title. And then to the left of him, you have Vi Alexander, producer on Chronicles of Elyria. If this is your first time joining us, what we're going to do is we are going to answer your questions. We have a curated list of questions that were posted on our online forums over the last week or so, and we gave the community members an opportunity to upvote and downvote the questions that they were most interested in hearing the answers to. And then we use that as an opportunity to kind of make sure you guys are kept up to date with what we've been working on and kind of how things are going and that sort of thing. So, yeah. Before we jump into the questions, though, I'm going to hand it over to Vi. Vi, would you like to give the community kind of an update on what we've been up to lately and what they can look forward to in the near future?
Certainly. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. If you've been keeping track with our production updates and the posts on our blog, which you should, then you will know that last year was sort of a time of setting foundations. We developed our server platform, we developed a lot of our core tech that we're going to use to build out the engine and the different pieces of the puzzle to put together in order to actually start making real progress on the real implementation of the game as it will land in player hands. So previous to that, we had done a lot of prototyping to make sure that some of the concepts that we were attempting in Chronicles of Elyria were going to work out the way that we intended. Some interface examples, some gameplay examples, some movement controls. Since we're doing a lot that is different from other MMOs, we wanted to make sure that things were going to work out the way that we thought. And at this point, we're moving into a pretty strong execution phase of those gameplay elements. We're going to be bringing online our servers and getting players into our Vox Illyria client pretty soon. First, we'll be introducing our Alpha 1 backers into that ecosystem, and as we continue to add more features, we'll want more players in there, so we'll be increasing that scope out to Alpha 2 backers, Beta 1, Beta 2, etc. And Vox Illyria is our opportunity to test out gameplay features before we put in all of the effort of creating the full 3D assets, all the animations, all the particle effects, and everything that comes from the full experience of the game. But instead, we can do it in a very easy manner without a lot of overhead. You know, even our programmers can just generate a model really quickly from a voxel builder, and we can test out a lot of the things that don't require 3D gameplay. We can test out location, we can test out like a crafting mechanic, as long as it's not the specific interface movement that needs to happen, but we can make sure that the game balance is what we need. We can make sure that the load on the server is appropriate, and a variety of different things. So we're excited to get that going, and we're working on a lot of things that are going directly into that experience right now. At the same time, we're working on the Unreal version of those things, but obviously it will look a little bit different, and there are additional features or an additional step on many of those features. Combat or crafting is a good example of that, where the experience is going to be more refined in a full 3D environment, and so those are the things that we'll be focusing on after we get the feel and the mechanics of it good through our testing and validation in Vox Elyria. So we've got our real server, I got our
friends and family accessing it. It's been up since the end of November, early December now.
And it's even pretty stable now, which we tested. So we've got our server up, and we're starting to put in the real thing. So we've got our character creation system is coming online, and then we'll be quickly moving into world interaction that we already prototyped. You can see the video of that from like more than a year ago. And then we'll be moving into things like crafting and
inventory, the world interaction systems from before. A lot of the systems that people had seen before in our previous videos were either online using the kind of built-in networking system that is part of Unreal, or it was using our offline demo called Prologue: The Awakening. And so now we're taking a lot of the stuff that we did before that was online using Unreal's networking system, or that was done in Prologue, and we're moving it into the online world, which means adding those features on the back end of the server, as well as the network communication for those. And it's coming along quite nice. The team and I are happy with the progress, and we're very excited to get players into this.
Yeah, so it's a very exciting time. A lot is happening very quickly. Well, quickly in development terms.
Right. It's like dog years.
Yeah, it's a little odd, but so things are coming along. I encourage you to take a look at the screenshots from the latest production update and the other things that are showing up on the blog, because there is a lot of cool stuff coming on. A lot more of the character models, as you should expect to be able to build them in game.
There's a lot of world building happening now too.
Yeah.
So like our character artists right now are working a lot on the tribes. Like we've done a lot of the documentation of the tribes and balancing and statistical stuff and talking about what their cultures and religions are. But now we're actually going through and defining all the visual targets and the clothing and the architecture and things like that, which is actually really exciting to see. So we've been gradually releasing. We're doing them now two tribes of sprint. We've got 2 tribes of sprint, male and female, so things are coming along pretty quickly. We're gradually releasing the players, just kind of stretch it out a little bit because it's fun to see them. So we've got 2 more that we're working on this sprint and more coming in the future. So.
Oh man, the ones I saw yesterday were awesome.
Those were awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited.
But speaking of character creation, it's something that's a little unique in Chronicles of Elyria versus other games, and so the actual experience is sort of metaphysical, and I think that probably Snipehunter here can probably explain a little bit more about what's going on there, what the experience will be, and maybe even give you a preview of some stuff.
Yeah, I hear we might have a video somewhere to show. But yeah, so we've talked before, if you've been paying attention, about the idea that you play souls. Not trying not to.
I'm fine with it.
I even got a pacifier for my hand, so I don't slap. But
they did say that they're going to do a drinking game. Every time
is that so?
Well, now that I'm gaming the system. No, but we had talked, previously about the idea that you don't exactly play characters per se. You have souls that you spark into characters and inhabit characters for their lifetime. So one soul might be used on characters repeatedly. You might play one character as a blacksmith for that character's life, and then when that character dies, you might take that same soul and put it into a carpenter or a diplomat or an adventurer. And so our character creation process sort of takes this into account and explains some of the lore of the world. It takes place in a place called the Soul Chamber, a private piece of the Akashic record where souls go after they die. After their bodies die, souls never die.
Souls never die.
But yeah, so one of the things that we've been working on is building that soul chamber and the character creation experience of selecting a soul, inhabiting a character, and then customizing that character to enter the world. And so if we have something to show, I would love to show it to you. So one of the coolest things I think about that orrery where you see the planets moving and stuff, that's legit, and it shows you where the planets and other celestial bodies in the system are on the date of your character's birth, which matters to your player's destiny.
It matters.
It matters a lot. Yeah, and we actually, for those of you that were looking at it, there's a double star system, which is kind of unique.
A rare one.
A rare one, actually. Yeah, and I don't know that that we've actually seen really a double star system in a game like this before. But
it's called a binary star.
It's a contact
binary star, actually. Yes. So we, you guys may or may not know, we try and do things not realistic to our world just for the sake of being realistic. We try and do it in a way that adds value and entertainment and fun. And a while back, we actually got feedback from some astronomers in our community that the lighting in our system, having it being unequal day and nighttime, would only work if you had a binary star system that was providing lighting over a larger than 50% arc of the planet. So we incorporated that and also added it to our lore and things like that, so that our lighting ratio of the 2.5 hours of day-night cycle actually is scientifically accurate, as well as many of other things. So it's just fun for us to kind of geek out on science stuff. Also, there are rockets landing and stuff now, so it's kind of an appropriate time to be working on astronomy.
On Earth,
not on Illyria.
Yeah.
That's a good one. They're like, we have rockets.
If you guys research the right technology, who knows?
You never know. So cool, you guys actually got a chance to see the Soul Chamber before. We had a lore video for that over a year ago with the voice of Inara Star Song talking about it. That was set up as a way to kind of talk about the lore. It's the same environment that we had there before, but now it's kind of playable and designed to allow you actually go in to do the character creation as you saw. So now it's not a navigable scene, but it's a scene that has lighting and cinematic cameras so that we can transition through the various parts of character creation, which is stuff we're working on right now. So when we get to the end of our current release, which is 020, you guys, I'm sure there will be more videos. You guys can actually see the process of character creation and how those camera transitions work and kind of get a better look at what the Soul Chamber looks like. So, cool. Well, guys, that was fun. That was it. No.
Great. See you next time.
We'll see you next time. No. That was just kind of an overview of some of the stuff that we've been working on over the last release and some of the stuff that we've been doing from a design perspective, etc. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions you guys sent us.
Many good questions.
We had some really great questions. We always do, especially with you guys upvoting them. We actually had some downvoted too. It's kind of funny to see which questions you guys don't want answered to, because we never know if you just don't want to know the answer because you're like, I already know the answer to that. I don't need you to answer it again. Or if you're just like, I don't want to know the answer to that question. Yeah, please don't tell me. So we had some pretty strongly downvoted ones too, but the ones that were upvoted were all good questions. So let's jump right in. The first question is from community member Sanguinish Eviscerator, and he asks, when can we expect to start getting info on game mechanics such as law enforcement, taxation, etc.? Something fleshed out and concrete. What do you think?
Oh, well, you know, we need all of these features fully, detailed, and we need to explain it to the players kind of before they get a hold of it. And all of that stuff plays into things like Kingdoms of Elyria and other aspects of stuff that's coming up. So, I don't want to cop out and say soon, but, maybe within the next 2-3 months, we could probably have some answers that we can share. I actually don't want to make any guarantees, though, because I'm already on the hook for that crafting design journal.
That's what happens when you say I'm working. And actually, I think I volunteered you for that one, so I think I'm at fault for that one. But, I mean, you have been working on crafting stuff quite a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As far as implementing some of those features, as Maxwell was saying, they do really fit in with elements of Kingdoms of Elyria that we'd want to test, so we won't be implementing them for a while.
Right.
Obviously, we need to get people into Vox Elyria first. We need to start testing basic things that everybody will experience. Movement, interaction between the world, interaction between players, communication, the contract system, other things that are going to come much earlier than laws.
Yeah.
Although laws is an extension of our contract system. So we do need to get you guys some details on that.
I think the important thing just to remember is that there are a lot of features with this game, more than any other game that I'm aware of, because it's more of a world than it is just a game. And so the mechanics aren't things like points and score and XP. It's how do we make a living ecosystem? How do we make a living economy? And so, these are not things that we want to rush. Many of them have been in design for a long time, but even still, as we start to implement them, as we start to get them in game, there's playtesting that we need to do and balancing that we need to do even before we communicate information to you guys. So, we've talked about it before, but we've got Alpha 1 and then Alpha 2 are kind of our two major releases around the kind of development of our features. Then we get into betas and stress tests and stuff like that, which is later on. Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 is kind of divided up into two kind of key areas. Alpha 1, the focus is mostly on core gameplay mechanics, the things that people are accustomed to doing in more traditional RPG things. So like, managing your inventory and your equipment and being able to engage in combat and crafting and move around in the world and exploring and interacting with NPCs and talking to people and taking quests and things like that. I mean, it will feel a lot like a lot of the other MMOs you've played, but we're doing things in a different way. Like, you still want to interact with NPCs, but obviously how you interact with NPCs in CoE is different. You know, they have their own AI and their own goals and their own needs, but interacting with the AI or the NPCs is still a core component to any RPG. And so the focus on Alpha 1 is really about making sure those core tenets of the RPG are there. Alpha 2 builds upon that and introduces a lot more of the sandbox elements that we're incorporating into the world. So a lot more to do with the land management and the varying levels of kingdom management, like the counties and duchies and you know, that sort of thing. So those are things that absolutely define Chronicles of Elyria and are core to what we view as the game as a whole, but it's not necessary to get players in and having a good time and having fun and being able to give us feedback on the day-to-day operations. Because in general, you know, day-to-day, not everyone is going to be managing land or managing a kingdom. You know, that does apply to a smaller subset of the player base. And we want to make sure that the stuff that we're testing earlier on are the things that more players are going to be exposed to, because we really want to nail those and make sure that they're a good experience. Okay, well, moving on then. The next question is from community member Matrim Cawthon. Shout out to your Wheel of Time reference. His question is what resource... By the way, I can name every one of your guys' aliases that are Wheel of Time names, just so you know. What resources will be available to Monarch for economic data collection? For example, will there be generalized notes on general productivity or taxation in a duchy, county, city? How much of this will be needed to be collected by the players or NPC scripts?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and it's funny because, you know, the knee-jerk reaction would be, oh, we're going to try to make this as easy as we possibly can, and we're going to simplify everything down to like a UI page or something like that. But that's not actually good for the kind of world that we're building, right? Like, kings need to count on their dukes, dukes need to count on their counts. That was bad. Anyway.
I wonder if there's a relationship there. I wonder if they were called counts because they're like, you're the people I count on. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
But
yeah,
we'll go with it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
etymology is very fascinating.
I agree.
Oh God,
I agree.
Do not get her started. Yeah. She owes us a design journal on communication and language now.
Yeah,
she's been writing it.
My communication design journal is a lot further along than his crafting one.
That's true. That's true.
Wow.
I was actually just going to take the crafting page from our internal wiki.
Just copy paste.
it. They'd be okay with that. They'd just be like, well, show us what you know.
Exactly. No, I would not be okay with that. But yeah, the point I was actually making is that these roles all have jobs that relate to collecting the data that gets to a king so that a king or a monarch can make their decisions. And we don't want to take those jobs away from players or the NPCs that they've appointed to do those jobs. And so the act of collecting this data will be an aspect of playing the game. It's not going to be collected for you automatically. That said, what kind of data you can collect really depends entirely on who you're hiring to do it and their skill set. You will always be able to get a general accounting of how many pieces of coinage were collected for taxing and things like that. But if you want to know about crop productivity or something like that, you're probably going to need to hire somebody who understands that or who already has the experience, or count on your mayors to be accurate with their accounting. Really, it's going to depend entirely on your logistical ability.
Yep. That's not to say we don't want to automate some of this stuff. I mean, there's a difference between making sure that the legwork is being done and making sure that the legwork is being done by players. You know, not all of this needs to be done by players.
Absolutely.
There are NPCs that, you know, you can hire as tax collectors or auditors or surveyists or, you know, whatever it is, that can be either players or NPCs. But either way, you know, those roles exist not only to give players something to do, because they also provide opportunity for story and conflict. Like, you hire a tax collector to go out and collect the taxes, or, you know, to pick up the strong boxes so that they can bring the money back to the central bank of whatever your kingdom is. And, of course, the people out there see these strong boxes being carried in wagons every day. So NPC or player, you know, whether it's census data or taxation or something like that, like, it needs to be a real thing in the world and not something that just shows up on a UI somewhere.
Right.
Cool.
Then there's opportunity for shenanigans.
Shenanigans unfold.
We should just call this Chronicles of Shenanigans.
I'm sure that domain name exists precisely now. All right. Icarans asks, how will you accommodate players that don't know how to script to work with an essential feature like OPC scripting? Would there be something like an in-game repository of pre-made and or community-made scripts? So this is actually something that we had talked about quite a while ago. For those that aren't familiar with the system, in Chronicles of Elyria, your character persists when you sign off. We do that because it's about storytelling. It's about, you know, what's unfolding and what kind of events are occurring in the world. And we don't want characters magically vanishing from the world as soon as you go offline. It's important, Yes, Mom. It's important. It's important that it's empty for what it's worth, so it's not like it's heating the table or anything. It's important then that they stay in the world and are persistent. That being said, you know, we don't want them just kind of standing around doing nothing, and so we have this concept of offline player characters. So we have the player characters and non-player characters that every other RPG has, but then these offline player characters are unique in that they allow the players to do things while they're offline while still maintaining kind of their player nature. In terms of what you can do, we actually use the same scripting environment and same sets of things to run our NPCs as we do the OPCs. So out of the box, we have the concept of different roles. So whether or not you're a wandering merchant or an innkeeper or a tavern keeper or a farmer or whatever it is that your character is defined as, if we've got NPCs that do that, chances are good there's going to be a role option where you can just say, I want to do that while I'm offline. So let's say you've got a plot of land and you put a farm on it and you sign off, but before you do go, I'm going to be a farmer while I'm offline. Then when people pass by, they're going to see you working the farms, and then when it starts to get dark, going into the house and resting, maybe getting some food, and then coming back out and farming again the next day. And so you're going to feel very much like an NPC to on-viewers or onlookers, but you're doing it in a way that our NPCs also do their thing. That being said, we also talk to the players about being able to customize these, because there are some specific needs that our NPCs don't have. And so we've been working on a combination of doing a scripted version of this, which uses our language of choice, which is TypeScript, or providing players kind of a node-based visual way of which to program this. No matter which one we choose, though, it's our intention to allow players to distribute these in one way or another, whether or not that's through an online marketplace, so that maybe the players can make a little bit of money off of creating these things for other players, or whether or not it's just having a kind of a shareware site, or shareware, wow, that's a word I haven't heard in a while. A site where they can share them with each other and then download it and then upload it to us as they activate it for their character. So we're not sure yet which approach we're going to take, but you can be assured that if you don't know how to script, if you don't know how to program using the system, there will still be plenty of stuff for your character to do while you're offline, and potentially you can rely on other people that you trust or highly rated kind of behaviors and roles to kind of do the things for your character while you're offline. So I wouldn't worry about it.
As complicated and interconnected as the mechanics are in Chronicles of Elyria, because of the offline player characters, 100% of players will need to be able to run their characters through the system.
Right.
Which means that we can't
make it wrong. Like it's got to be high level, easy to understand, right, easy to use.
Yeah, we can't create a programming requirement to play our game unless we want it to be ultra niche, which we don't.
Ultra niche, you must program. CS degree required.
Right. I mean, there's things like Screeps and other games where you do actually have to program.
Shout out to Screeps, by the way.
Yeah.
Since we named it, it's a fun game. If you guys want to learn to program, or if you programmed before, it's an RTS game where you control your units entirely through JavaScript programming.
Actually bought that this weekend.
It's a fun game. Yeah. I recommend it.
The quality of your code is the quality of your
AI is as good as you are as a programmer. There were several of us in the community, actually. I have a server set up on DigitalOcean. It's down at the moment, but we did have servers set up for a while, and I think at one point in time we had close to 30 people in our community playing Screeps together. So, I don't know, maybe I got super busy at the end of last year. I mean, there was stuff going on.
Weird.
I mean,
what were you doing?
End of year stuff, but I got super busy, so I didn't get a chance to play with him as much as I wanted to. But now that it's kind of January and February, God, it's February already. That's it. I give up. I'm a little less busy now, so maybe I'll start playing again.
Yeah, it needs to be approachable. Right. That's the takeaway here, and so we will try to find the right way to present that. But we might take a couple stabs at it. We have good ideas.
Yep. Next question. Aracil asks, when can we expect the organization's design journal that's been talked about for the past couple of months, and can we get a brief overview of what it'll contain? Really interested to hear how things have changed for organizations after Caspian's recent comments on schools and guilds in the Soul Chamber. So organizations are actually one of those things that we are very excited about, not only because it's an integral system in the game, because really Chronicles of Elyria is a very social game, whether or not you're talking about families or running settlements or domains or organizations. It is not a single player game. It's really meant to be played with other people in many different ways. And one of that kind of methods is through organizations. But aside from the in-game stuff, our website right now is continuing to undergo evolution, and one of the things we're doing right now actually is account merging, because we have several people in our community who had multiple accounts that had packages on them and they want to combine them. But we're doing that so that we can move into Surname Reservation, which begins at the beginning of March. And the Surname Reservation allows players to capitalize on this idea of player identities and actually obtain a surname that they can reserve for their families. Once we do that, we get into a system we've got called character personas, and we're super excited about that because character personas, for the first time, will allow people in our community to interact with each other on our website and potentially through Discord, not as their user aliases, but as their characters, or more specifically, remnants of characters past. They're playing kind of in history, which is a cool approach. So you're playing as your kind of distant and not so distant ancestors. But one of the things that allows us to do is, because we're now dealing with characters and not players, is it allows us to start creating in-game organizations. And so we're very excited about that. It's something we're planning to do, and then, you know, in the next soon. We'll go soon. Soon. I'm not allowed to give you date ranges. I think I said beginning of March for Surname Reservation, so so soon. So I expect that design journal to actually be coming pretty soon. But Aristotle did mention that we're talking about it inside the Soul Chamber, which is true. For those that don't come into our Discord, which if you don't come into our Discord, you should be, we've got a large number of community members there. I think over 5,000 now. At any one time, we have up to 2,000 active members that are in there and discussing. So it's a great opportunity to get to know the community and talk directly to the devs.
Right, we're in there sometimes
Several of us are in there throughout the day.
Always there.
Period.
Yes,
We are always there.
There is an image that we are always watching.
We're always there. But it's a good opportunity to come in. But just for the sake of completeness, I did talk recently about organizations in Discord, and it was pinned inside of a special channel in Discord called the Soul Chamber. And this is an area where when I come in and I have important things to say and it leads to a discussion, people will copy and paste it into this channel just so that others can use it as a point of reference. And one of the things I talked about is that in Chronicles of Elyria, we do have 3 different types of organizations. We have guilds, we have schools, and we have associations. And each of them play a different role and are kind of designed to be different entity types. Guilds are kind of more in line with traditional guilds, but when I say traditional guilds, I mean guilds in our world, not necessarily guilds in traditional RPGs. The concept of a guild is you have a business of some kind where people work together towards a common goal, and usually the people in a guild are going to have shared skills, which is not typical of most RPGs. Most RPGs, when you have a guild, the goal is to get a wide range of skills. You want a healer, and you want various other type of damage dealers and defensive types.
Guilds in most MMOs have come to mean a raiding party.
Right. Yeah. Adventuring guilds at the very least.
Right.
Club.
A club. And ours are very much more akin to a profession guild, but it's not limited to profession.
It's not limited. So you can't have things like blacksmithing guilds and various crafting guilds, but you can also create an assassin's guild. Again, most people are going to have similar skills, or you can have a tinker's guild, or things like that. But the focus on these guilds is typically what happens is that you've got a leader. There's kind of an executive level, and then you've got members, and they go and generate revenue, and the revenue comes in through them, and then a percentage of that is given up to the leadership, and that's kind of the flow of finances. Some of the benefits of these is that they have shared technology. With organizations like guilds, when you travel to different cities, if they have branches set up, then you can generally get access to their tools and equipment. They're focused heavily on mercantilism and business and things like that. Another type we have is schools. Schools are very different from guilds in that the finances typically come in from the domains, so they come directly to the managers of the guilds or the schools through like the county or the duchy or the kingdom, and then that helps fund the school, as well as members inside of a school are made up of 2 classifications. You've got the facilitators, the ones who create education for everybody, and then you've got the students. And in this case, money actually comes in to the organization from some of the members, the students, and gets redistributed by the organization to the facilitators or the teachers. And so it works different. Some of the focuses of schools are on education. So there are a lot of research happens within schools. They've got access to different crafting stations that allow you to do research and technology and develop skills more quickly. They have the ability to award titles to people, like certifications almost. Like, we certify that this person is an expert level blacksmith and things like that. So all good for just kind of letting people know who you are, because we don't have classes. So if you're like looking for a blacksmith, you kind of just have to either go to a well-known blacksmith, or you have to use these kind of certifications and stuff to go, oh, okay, you're a master blacksmith, cool, like I need you to create something for me. And then the last type of organization we have are just called associations, which we like to think of as more like nonprofits. Typically in those, money comes in from everybody. They're given up to the management, and then they're redistributed back in whatever ways are necessary. And they usually don't have a surplus because the goal is just to do stuff. Good examples might be, we hear a lot of like places people are wanting to create like nature preserves because we've got the ability for animals and plants to go extinct in this world. So any kind of preservationist might end up being an association. But really, you can think of them as just any organization that people want to set up that have a need to collaborate.
Right. Order of the Pine Cone Association.
Yep.
Right.
The Cult of Melanism.
The cult of religions. People have asked, can you create your own religions in CoE? You can't create your own religion. Religion plays a specific mechanic in this game. But you can create variations of religions that have your own doctrine, which you would typically do as associations.
Cult it up.
Cult it up, yeah. The final kind of main focus and feature area of these is that when you're talking about guilds, typically you can only be in one guild at a time based on the guild type. So I can be in a blacksmithing guild and I can also be an assassin's guild at the same time. But I can't be in 2 blacksmithing guilds and I can't be in 2 assassins guilds because there's a conflict of interest. It's mercantilism, and if you have access to 2 blacksmithing guilds, they're talking about trade secrets here that you'd be sharing. Now, when I say you, I of course mean your identity, because if you can get a second identity, then nobody knows you're in 2 at the same time.
Right.
Then we also have schools. Typically, those schools are focused on education and the development of new technology, and so you can only ever be in 1 school at a time. So, you could join a crafting school and learn to craft, or you could join kind of a military academy and work on your combat-related skills or something like that, but you can't be in both at the same time. So you can only focus on one set of skills at once. And then for associations, there's no limit. You can be in as many associations as you want to because, well, they're just associations. They're opportunities to collaborate with people.
Your member fees might get out of hand. Though.
Right. So, that gives you kind of an intro of what we're going to talk about in the design journal. We'll go into a little bit more depth. Might talk a little bit how the mechanics work, what the permission systems are for organizations and how you can grant or take permissions, how organizations relate to the concept of citizenship, because much like in our world, people are entities, but also organizations are as well. So the same laws that apply and same things that apply to people apply to organizations as well. So like you can say, I only want my brother to be allowed in this room. You can also say like, I only want people of this organization allowed in this room. So you can kind of blanket it to an entire organization as opposed to a single individual. So we'll talk more about that. Like I said, because we've got personas coming up and we want to do a guild and organization fair, we really want to get players creating these organizations on our website. They do carry over into the game as well. Because we want players to get in that quickly, we'll probably be releasing the design journal on organizations soon. Anyways. All right. Are branches still a mechanic for schools and guilds? If so, how does that transfer of information, research, experience, work, exposure, work, EXP? I assume that research experience work between them. That's a great topic for the design journal, so I'm not going to go into too much depth now, but yes, branches are still a mechanic of schools and guilds, and as I talked about before, if you didn't know, those branches can exist within a single kingdom. If you actually make a separate school or guild outside of the kingdom, while it might be the same one, it's treated as a different organization for game mechanics purposes, similar to our world.
Because taxes.
Because taxes. It really always comes down to money. You can't be working in multiple kingdoms and only paying taxes to one, so sorry. All right. Fenrir asks, crafting related, you're giving us wonderful combinations of stitches, patterns, and materials to play around with, but will there be ways for us to add our own designs? Paintings or sculptures? Will I have to find a pattern in-game, or will there be ways to construct my own design and perhaps get it accepted for in-game use? What do you think?
Well, I think we definitely want people to be able to, make their own designs and stuff. I don't think that we want to be the gatekeeper for content, so that's not really in our plans. But that said, we do want to provide you with all of the tools necessary to be able to create your own content in-game. So, if you're a painter, then that means painting tools. If you're a sculptor, that means some way to build sculpture shapes. And so all of this kind of stuff is slated to happen, but we're not going to have a place where you submit your Photoshop file for us to review and then accept. That's not how it's going to work. Yeah,
it's hard because we get into intellectual property rights stuff, so we need to make sure that any in-game assets are created in-game and remain in-game, so we can't have them going back and forth. But, we do want you to have the tools to be able to create those. And let's be honest, folks, texture editors have been around since Super Nintendo, like Mario Paint and stuff like that, so I'm pretty sure we've got the technology to do that now.
Yeah, but we can't be the gatekeepers of every shape of every piece of content.
Are we talking about the TDC or the TTD?
No, I'm just saying that we can't be the gatekeepers of everything that's created if we truly want to make a player-run world, a player-run civilization. If it all has to go through us, then we have failed in our mission, which is to create this sandbox with meaning.
And self-moderation.
Yeah, with self-moderation and
safe.
safe.
That's not a world, right? That's a game.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, but games by their definition have some authority that is outside of the players. You know, there's a rule book that says this is what you can and cannot do, and as much as we can, we're trying to put that rule book into the hands of players.
Right. Chronicles of Elyria is really a lot more of a simulation than a game, but
it's a world.
Yeah.
And the more I work on this, the more I try and look at what we're doing as a simulation and a world, the more I come to the conclusion that we are already in a simulation. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
What, real life?
Yeah, this is just a simulation.
Yeah,
there's too many coincidences. Like, we start working on astronomy stuff, and it's like, oh, well, this passes through at exactly this time, which just happens to have this effect. It's like, this is a game. Like, we're in a simulation right now.
Well,
I'm totally with
really in the long run, it doesn't matter if we are or we aren't.
If you can't tell.
If you can't tell.
Yeah.
Right. All right, cool. Kaligo Mercator asks, how useful will NPCs be when it comes to jobs? Will they just run their own organizations parallel to player guilds and offer the occasional contract, or could a noble or guild leader hire them for the boring and menial jobs players would rather avoid? First of all, before I go into too much detail and answer this question, if we've created a game where the work you need to do is boring and menial, we probably need to revisit the things that we're giving you to do. That being said, let me carry on. Example of this would be building maintenance, long guard shifts, and long-distance hauls on relatively safe trade routes. Of course, an OPC could do this, but that would force you to rely on a player with specific skills being offline often enough and willing to help out. So what are your take on that? How useful will NPCs be?
Well, you know, we mentioned before, OPCs and NPCs are basically running all on the same sort of technology, in that we don't want, we don't want the sort of classic, I stand in one place and will tell you my name and my job and will answer questions like mantra and dungeon. We don't want that kind of NPC in our world, right? So it's safe to assume then that our NPCs need to be very capable.
It's interesting because it's kind of this bi-directional thing. Like, we're trying to make it so that our players, when they're offline, are more like NPCs, but at the same time, the NPCs become more like the players.
Absolutely. And so, to directly answer the question, we absolutely want you to hire help. In fact, we expect that there are going to be big jobs that even small groups of players aren't going to be able to do without hiring help.
Why do you think we let the NPCs procreate? It's so that you guys have people to hire.
But at the same time, it's important to state again and again until it sinks in that in an ideal situation, 100% of the characters on a server could be players, and it would be essentially no different than if some percentage were NPCs only.
Right.
Because they will still try to perform the same activities that an offline player character would. They're going to be trying to achieve similar goals as to what players will.
You often talk about this, too, that they're autonomous. Like, a lot of people are used to playing sims or games where they can click on the NPCs and tell them, like, go do this, like, righto, like, go farm this or go do this, but that's not this game. Like, you can ask politely, but they have their own families and their own needs, and maybe they're hungry and thirsty, and they're like, I'm not going to go do that right now because I need to go eat. And so, you don't have the ability to micromanage anybody but yourself.
Yeah, you can only control what you do when you're online. Everything else you have to make your peace with.
Cool. Rainsy asks, can you tell us the names of all the skill trees you have? That really hasn't changed much since we began. There are obviously sub-skill trees that you've worked on, but I think the only main difference we've had is we still have the two core ones, so we have combat and crafting. We also have the bardic and deviant ones, and then we have, let's see, survival. That one's the kind of the core one. And then we used to have a gathering skill tree, but the gathering system kind of got rolled into the crafting system as related skills now, primarily because it doesn't take a lot of character skill to go cut down wood or to, pick berries and things like that. And so we tried to make that skill based, and it just didn't fit in. It's more just player skill, if anything, and so we just kind of lumped the attributes and requirements for that into the larger crafting system. But what we did do is we kind of factored out more of a lore-based skill system where it's not even about it's not a skill per se, it's just like a dictionary of like how much you know about the various herbs, like which berries are poisonous and which ones aren't, and your ability to recognize the different types of animals and things like that. So it's more of a knowledge skill than anything. Knowledge, it's like playing Dungeons and Dragons, like knowledge of religion, knowledge of alchemy, knowledge of magic. maybe, I don't know. But those are, I think, at this point, we haven't changed anything. So those remain the ones that we've always had. And there are several sub-skills underneath that with relationship to, like, undercrafting. We've got, you know, all the different professions related to, like, working with the different natural resources. So, you know, renewable and non-renewable. So if you're talking about metals and stones and minerals versus, you know, talking about plants and animals and things like that. So there's a lot of different professions and a lot of different skills underneath that.
Yep, there's a design journal on it that's still
outstanding. It's not even outstanding.
You have an old one on it that mentions all the skill trees, so that is still.
Yeah,
I'll say this: as we get further along and start making all the assets for these, which now our content team is working on assets for the various crafting professions and things like that, we get more solid information on the time it takes to do each of them. It allows us to make sure that our scope is good, and as we do that, we can update our game guides to actually identify, like, these are in, like, we have the assets for these, we have the mechanics in this, you know, in place, and we're happy with that. So yeah, so look for those on, I don't know if there'll be another design journal on that, but you can look for more crystallized information on that showing up in our game guides soon.
Yeah, as we move forward.
All right, Sabacat asks, will the production of literature be something a scribe does in a painstaking manner, or can it be automated with something like a printing press for mass distribution?
Yes.
I sent you there.
Yep. So, yeah, realistically, it depends on like level of technology of your kingdom and the research that players have done. If you have a printing press, then of course you could use it to mass produce your work. If you don't, though, you're probably going to be writing out pages and sewing them together into books.
Or hiring an army of scribes to do it.
Which is what I would do.
Yeah, just be like, you know what, here's the original, you guys take care of this. Cool. Markov asks, can you tell us what are the crew size you expect for the tasks activities that will require several characters? In parentheses, how many characters will be needed to run a lumber mill or a stone quarry to build a bridge or a sailboat?
Wow, that depends almost entirely on the scope. Like, sailing a boat could be a one-person job, or, you know, if you had a massive galley that you were moving down a river, you might need 30 people to man the oars. You know, likewise, depending on the lumber mill, you might only need 2 people just to carry the logs and throw them onto a saw. But if it's a much larger production, you might need 10 or 12 people. It really, really depends on the scope of the site and the job that you're doing.
Yeah, I think the important thing to underscore there is there are some tasks that require more than one person, and we are implementing these systems to allow for more than one person. There's actually a task right now on my list for designing the use of multi-person vehicles. You know, you've got siege equipment you need to, like, roll up to the side of a castle. Like, each person's, you know, got to be working together or you're going to start to go off course and things like that. Sieging is not easy. Same thing with, like, catapults and trebuchets. Like, you know, these are multi-person activities to load and fire and things like that. So there are definitely multi-person structures and equipment. How many people is really just a matter of scope and kind of what it is you're trying to do.
Oh, by the way,
yes.
You haven't been slapping enough. So
but I was doing a little bit.
The drinking game is not going well. They're thinking about changing it to whenever we say soon.
Well, that one's not going away.
I'm offended by that one, yeah.
Maybe soon. We should drink every time we say soon.
Then it would be less soon.
That's going to impact our development.
I can't drink anyways. Later. There has been significantly less apple juice consumed because I'm not allowed to have food during the day. I've been trying to lose weight. I'm on a diet right now. I'm doing intermittent fasting. So everyone's like, I'm like, hey, it's like 4 o'clock and nobody's drinking apple juice. What's going on? And they're like, well, you can't drink apple juice till 5 o'clock, and we're not going to do it without you. So, which is great of my employees. I appreciate that. All right, Icarans asks, will it be possible to choose the gender of the character we want to play? It was stated in one of our Q&As that we do not get to choose the gender of our children. How will this affect heirs? As heirs are reserved, will this reservation choice be made before or after we get to know the gender of our child? Furthermore, what happens when we start anew? Let a character die without an heir, for example. When choosing a new child to inhabit, will we be able to see the gender of the children? Our philosophy on this is always to allow you to be informed when making choices. So you have an heir, or you have a child, and you know the gender. And then you can make a decision whether or not you want that to be an heir or not. If it's not the gender that you're looking for, then you can just wait and pick a different heir. Or, you know, you pick a different heir, but they still end up being an heir due to the line of succession. So there are many options there, but we don't want people to have to declare an heir before they know the gender of their children. But you still do not get to choose the gender of your children under normal family circumstances. Like in our world, you can have children, but you're not going to know the gender of them until the contract is complete.
Comes to term.
Comes to term, right. The terms are complete. The idea behind that is that we want to make sure that there is a balanced ratio of male and female characters in the world. And if we put that choice solely in the hands of players, it could become unbalanced one way or the other. Whether or not that's unbalanced towards male characters, because a lot of MMO players, not all, but a lot of them are male and like to play characters they identify with, or if it moves towards the female characters, because a lot of people like to play female characters, because in many games the female characters are more attractive to look at. So it's hard to know, and so the easiest thing for us to do is just to make sure that it remains random, which is not to say that you can't ever choose the gender of your character. For example, we have different paths. If you want to join a family, then you're limited by the family members that are there and available. But if you are really, if gender is really important to you, and it's worth being able to customize to that level your character, then there's always the option to go a ward and become a ward of the state, in which case you just pick the gender that you want, or even becoming a non-traditional character if you've got enough story points, in which case, which NPC you choose to play will dictate the gender. So you can always filter by, I'm interested in playing a very effective male diplomat, and then you can filter by that, and that'll give you the list of NPCs that you can take over. So.
There's a question about whether or not twins is a possibility.
Twins is a mechanic that we've discussed in the past. It's not currently in the spec. It's not scoped, but that doesn't mean it's out of the realm of possibility. More than likely what would happen is we would start introducing them for NPCs so that the population of NPCs remains stable. Because at this point, characters have souls and that are players, and so they have to be coup de grace or receive grievous wounds multiple times before there's any kind of permadeath. That ratio is smaller for NPCs because we don't want the same NPCs to just kind of always be there. And if somebody comes into town and slaughters all the NPCs, that should have a lasting impact on the story. Right. And so as a result of that, we perceive that there might be a gradual decline in NPCs unless we take steps to kind of mitigate that. One of which could be multiples. So, all right. We are done with our first page. Nice. Moving on to page 2.
And we're only almost out of time.
Perfect. I mean, these were less important anyways. That's why they had lower scores, right? I don't mean that. All right.
I'm sorry, people who got 33 upvotes.
Wow. Well, now Aurora knows how many he got. How will the engine communicate to the players they're making progress along their destinies? Will my character spend the whole life wandering, never know my destiny at all? I don't think that it's good to think about the game that way. Destinies and player destinies are a system for creating content for the players to consume, but they're something that's designed to be there in addition to the overall story that's happening in the world, the kind of the 10-year story, in addition to the sandbox elements that give you the opportunity to do things you want to do, whether or not that's crafting or adventuring or things like that. So it's better to think of your destiny as something that is there to be consumed, but not something that you need to measure your progress by. There isn't a way to say you're fully done with your destiny, even if you wanted to, because it's a personal decision. It could be that you decide, I don't want to do anything that my character was destined to do. I'm just going to sit and farm all day, and I'm going to do whatever I can to ignore any content that the game tries to present me with. In which case, you're effectively at 100% of the content. But you could be somebody who, every time there's the slightest hint that you're engaging in something that might result in some kind of fun outcome, that you jump on it immediately. I'd still highly, highly doubt that anybody is going to consume all of the potential destinies that they have in a single lifetime, just because the way we've generated it is to make it so that there's far more than you could possibly consume in a lifetime. So I would say don't worry about measuring progress. You don't need to know how far along you are. Really, I think what you should focus on is do you have consumable content? Are there things happening that you can engage with? And if not, maybe you want to get out a little bit and leave your comfort zone and go traveling and things like that, because doing those types of things are more likely to trigger things that affect your overall destiny. Question from Huntsmaster. What game mechanics will support taxation that is more complex than a simple flat fee per parcel of land or per building constructed on a parcel? There is an answer to this. It kind of goes back to what we talked about before, which is, there is property tax that allows you to collect money over a period of time or on a cycle for allowing people to own a parcel of land or to kind of lease a land. There is income tax for people who run businesses on your leased land. we tend to steer clear of percentage-based things because it makes it difficult to track the things we were talking about earlier. You know, signing a contract with someone that says you can live on this land, but you're responsible for giving me, 10 ingots of gold every month, or you're required to provide me, 2 bushels of carrots or whatever. It's easy to determine whether or not they've met their obligation or not. My coffers are empty. There's no food inside of my cellar. Like, clearly you've done something wrong. When you say things like, you need to give me 50% of all revenue, that's harder to prove.
It was a bad week.
It was a bad week and I don't have anything. Yeah. And that's not a great mechanic. I mean, obviously that we do that in our world.
But we also have organizations and companies that are legally required to report their earnings,
right.
And most do.
Right. Yeah.
So they know how much you made, and if you don't report it, then they know, and then that's called an audit, and it's not good.
Yeah. So there are several methods in which to track, but I think the important thing is like when we start getting more into the Kingdoms of Illyria and Alpha 2 type stuff, we'll give you a lot more information on the options on those things. This is a great question from Dadel. He asks, how will the Weird fit politically in a non-Weird kingdom with a non-Weird king? Do their culture having Weird in a kingdom seems to be a pain in the arse for everyone else? Vi, what are your thoughts on this? Because you were heavily involved in the creation of all the tribes, but even in specific the Weird, I think.
Yeah, I like a lot of their mechanics. It's definitely something interesting that hasn't been explored before, and it certainly has been a very polarizing tribe within the community. As far as some people love the idea of like communal shared settlements, and other people are just like, but I want to keep my stuff private. It's just like, don't play it Weird then. But the Weird are really focused on providing value to other tribes. While they're extremely insular and they care most about their culture and the people of their family or their settlement, other Weird, they make it a point to go out and learn things, to go and be a part of other nations, to learn other languages. Like their most common language other than their own is Naren, because it's the most prolific other language.
Right.
And so they want to be out there, they want to be in places that they're going to be utilized. So I think that they're not going to be disruptive, even though there are some things in the write-up that certainly lend themselves to being assassins or other spies or disruptive forces. I think overall the large majority of Weird are going to be valuable to other nations, as diplomats, as go-betweens, as just service workers, because they have a variety of skills, and that's something that culturally they really try to focus on.
It's very important in their culture is this idea of improving themselves and having this knowledge and having the capabilities and skills. I mean, I think honestly, aside from specialty crafts, like obviously, somebody who's from a Harathi environment is going to be very good blacksmiths, and a Broodveer type environment is going to have very good carpenters. I think the Weird in general are going to have the best overall general sense of all the crafting and the professions, and I don't think it's going to be uncommon to see the members of the Weird go to those places like, Harathi settlements or Broodveer settlements to become experts in those things. So I think opposite of disruptive, I think it's generally going to be for the most part, a benefit, a boon, and maybe even a good omen to have Weird in your society, providing those skills to you guys.
Right, and largely they're going to not want to disrupt your culture because that puts focus on them, and they don't want to be focused on as an individual.
Yeah.
I mean, really the Weird are they don't trade in goods, they trade in services. They don't make things, they make people, and that allows them to maintain the balance the best. They know where they need to apply themselves, and they know how to apply themselves to the twofold queens.
Yeah.
Great work.
They make amazing agents because they're multi-talented. Like, as a king, I can't imagine not wanting to hire Weird, right? Like, sure, for the sketchier stuff like assassinations and spying, fine. But I mean also for, like, I'm going to try to sign a treaty with my neighboring kingdom, but I think they might not be honest with me about this. I'm just going to send you out there to be a traitor, and then I want you to come back and tell me what you see, right? Like, it's not all daggers at midnight and all that kind of stuff. Far from it. And they're way more valuable outside of that realm, I think.
Yeah. I think one thing that's important and will be valuable is that you know where their allegiance lies. Pretty much always.
Right.
It's not with you. It's with the Weird. And that's...
Unlike the Teresk.
Right.
which then you never know. It's just kind of like they have several similar mechanics. I mean, they also trade on information and play this kind of dance of dynasties, in addition to just being very active traders and merchants. But unlike with the Weird, you never know where the allegiance of a Teresk is going to be. Is it with their family? Is it with Kingdom? And is it with you? Because it could be anywhere. They have no qualms with switching allegiance. I mean, once they sign a contract, I mean, to them, in fact, that's the thing. Really, is like you want to be the first allegiance that Teresk has, because violation of that is so important. So whereas the Weird, it's just kind of like you don't have to worry about it because you know where their allegiance is. With Teresk, you don't know who got there first. Like that's, I think, important too.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting layer of gameplay, and I think that people will be surprised that the Weird are a lot more welcome than perhaps some of the insular and settlement-based elements of the Weird maybe imply at first.
Yep. Atlas Forgiven, this is a great question for you. Atlas Forgiven asks, will the sign you're born under during character creation have an effect on them in some way? For example, if Aiden, God of War, is visible in the sky during your character's birth, will your character have some sort of bonus or inclination toward war and the martial aspect of character development? What say you? Is astronomy and astrology at all useful here?
Sidestepping the example given so that I don't give things away that I don't want to, the answer is emphatically yes. The stars, their position in the world, in the sky when you were born, and as they move over the course of events, all matter. And they're it's possible in a way to get a sense of the future if you understand the movements of the stars and what they represent.
In a way.
In a way.
Yeah.
And so it's a big deal. It's not like magic, but it might be as close as one gets in a world where magic is.
I mean, it can be too, because you've got the seers like Inara, whose sole purpose is to their talent is actually looking at the stars and being like, this is going to happen very soon. Maybe not know exactly when, but they understand, they can read the stars and see it like a picture. So I think that can also be magic, and I mean, because we don't have magic.
Magic's a myth.
Magic's a myth.
There's a reason that you saw the planetary orrery in the Soul Chamber. That is when you select your birth date for your character. You're choosing the alignment of the stars when you were born, which all matters. And
it's cyclical too. That's the thing that I love about this is if when you get in and actually take a look at the video, or when you get into character creation, you'll notice that the outer planets have a longer period than the inner ones. And so, on year one, when we start playing this game, the positions of some of those planets are in a unique position that they will never again be in over the course of the next 10 years. And similarly, there are some positions and alignments that we cannot get into in the first year, or 2 or 3. And those are predestined future events that, that only we know about. So, at any rate, cool.
Oh god, here come the false seers. Yeah!
Is it possible to be a citizen of more than one place? For example, someone being a citizen of Town A and Town B at the same time. That's kind of a more complicated question than you might think. I'll answer it 2 ways. It is only possible for a single individual to be a citizen of one location at a time. However, your individuality as defined by your identity does not need to be the same everywhere. So you could potentially be a citizen of... You cannot be a citizen in more than 2 places, but you might be a citizen, more than one citizen.
Yeah, exactly.
I could have an identity in Town A, pay my taxes there, have an establishment there, run over to Town B, pay my taxes there under my other identity, and be paying double taxes. Yes, it's possible.
It's possible, but
the answer is no, but also yes.
If you want to do that,
you
find the reason why that's a good idea, and then you do it.
You cannot be a citizen of more than one place. But who are you really? Think about that. All right. Nagash asked, as we know we can unlock new developments and technologies in crafting, will the same be true of combat? For example, can we discover new combat techniques with pre-existing weapons, or do we have to wait for a new type of weapon to be discovered through crafting before new combat skills can be learned? You've been working on combat a lot lately, Max.
I have.
What is your thoughts on the Wandering Warrior?
Yeah, this is actually a thing that's kind of dear to me. I love the idea of the warrior that travels from martial school to martial school, challenging the masters and learning new techniques and styles and taking them with you. And so
you make it sound like Pokemon trainers.
Yeah, kind of.
Collect your style here.
Right, but no, jokes aside, I think that that's for somebody who's focused entirely on combat. That's a really unique progression mechanic that we haven't really seen before. But that lots of fantasy stories and historical tales kind of incorporate. You know,
Yep.
the Wandering Samurai of Japan very much had this sort of thing going on. And so it was important to me to build a framework that would allow us to have undiscovered styles that you would find through, you know, moving through the world, or even just styles that you have to go to some far-off location to meet the master and learn. And so the answer is yes, it's absolutely possible. And in fact, it's integral to the design of combat.
Yeah, and part of our, I mean, in any project like this, there is the pre-production, post-production, and then post-launch phases. You know, we're in production right now, so we're obviously developing a lot of functionality and content, but, you know, after we're done and the game is live, like, we don't all just go home and be like, cool, we'll see you on the next game. Like, we've got things we've got to do for this game, and for us, it's a lot about developing new technology, new story arcs, and then also things like new combat sequences and, you know, new combat techniques, and then introducing those into the world without telling you, because there's no patch notes. But you may explore and find some hermit that you didn't know was there who knows how to use a weapon differently than anybody else you've ever seen. And that's because we've actually spent time making that happen, so that, you know, after launch, there's still things to constantly discover.
Perhaps it bears repeating again that we're not developing content, we're developing systems that allow players to make content for themselves.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why Chronicles of Elyria is quite different from other games that are in the same space, and why we have to kind of keep explaining things, and like when you
It's like that meme of like, here's how you explain.
Let me explain Chronicles of Elyria to you, because there's terms that we're using correctly but have also been used in a different way.
Meanings,
so trying to explain them can sometimes come with a lot of misconceptions.
Like race.
Or baggage that you've learned from another game in the past. But it's one of the reasons also why a smaller team is able to create something that is as wildly different and full of stuff as Chronicles of Elyria is, because we're not focusing on making all the swords. We're going to create a tool that lets you make all the swords. We're not creating all of the looks for the armor. We're creating tools that allow you to create all the looks for armor, to put the settlements down, to run your own economies, to run your own civilizations, to create your own laws, to punish other players. Like, we're even taking what a lot of games would have their GMs and their support staff be having to manage player punishment, and we're giving that to you too. Like, we don't want to,
with whips included.
Right, we don't want to have to be holding your hands, and we also don't want to be handcuffing you. So we're
back to the whip conversation.
So we're creating
manacles.
we're creating systems, not
Leather
content, and that's an important distinction about why the game is different and why our approach to development is successful.
Yep. All right, perfect. John Lionheart asks, how will a player be able to tell where in-game plot of land ends and begins? You know, knowing that there is a property table, a land management table somewhere, how do you as a player know that you are on a border of one person's land? There are kind of two answers to that. There are certain game modes like land management where you can, you know, see the boundaries of parcels so that you know when you're, you know, placing, whether it's a field or, you know, a foundation for a building or something like that, that you're on the border, overlapping the border of two parcels of land. That being said, that's only visible in certain game modes, and if you're just wandering through the world, you have no idea when you cross from one parcel of land to another parcel of land. There's no boundaries visible or anything like that, and unless the person's put up a sign like, do not enter property of so-and-so, you also don't know whose land you're on, much like in our world. Exactly like our world. So the short answer is you know it when you need to know it, and if you are curious as to whose land you are on, I would say do some exploration and see if you can find out. Ask locals, or if you're out in the middle of nowhere, like literally in the middle of nowhere, chances are good that even if you are on somebody's land, they don't know you're there.
Right, it doesn't matter, and that's how
Right.
you can start squatting
If
on
you're in a
somebody's land
forest,
and take...
if you're in a forest and nobody knows you there or knows you're there, are you really in a forest?
You're an OPC.
Yeah, you're an OPC. All right. We got 4 more questions. How are we doing on time? I think we're past time, but we're getting close. All right, let's go ahead and finish out those 4 questions, and we'll close out for the stream. So, Blank Window asks, will we be able to designate property managers who aren't family, who will count as not only entering the property so that it doesn't get marked as abandoned for the purposes of adverse possession, as well as to be able to collect rent, sign rental contracts, etc. Basically, the question continues on, but the underlying value is, can you delegate responsibilities? You absolutely can.
Yeah, and that's true of not just property management, but also some government activities as well.
Right.
Yeah, you know, you always have the opportunity to elect vassals and representatives to help you manage the things you want. We understand that mayors in particular have lots of land potentially. I mean, there are already settlements out there that have well over 100 parcels of land after account merging. Maybe even a couple hundred parcels of land. I mean, we're quickly approaching like full county size, small county, but we're county size.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Los Angeles County. So I mean, they're going to want to delegate that. So yeah, we want to make sure you guys have those tools.
All right. When you think about counties, think about counties in real life.
Right.
Do you think that you could manage all of that all by yourself? Unlikely.
Maybe in Jeremyville.
Maybe.
A small county, which I govern. There are no citizens, and it only exists in my head, but I can manage it like the best.
Yeah.
Anyways, Alice Forgiven asked, we know that marriage will function as a way for two individuals to share responsibility over land, titles, and power. Will there be a mechanic in place where two individuals can get a divorce? Ooh. Does it have to be a mutual agreement for a divorce? So let me begin this by saying, if you're going into this game planning to get married to another player and need to know whether or not you have an escape route, you are probably planning this incorrectly. I highly recommend marrying real-life family, friends, spouses, or people that you trust to access your inventory and stuff like that, because that is a mechanic here, is they have full access to your inventory and storage. Because we want marriage to mean something in this game, it needs to be important.
Although they don't necessarily know about all the secret compartments that you put in,
that's true.
In your cloak and your
Again,
under the
they have
bed.
access to it, but whether they know about it, that's something entirely different.
Right.
I mean, if you don't know about it, then it doesn't really matter. So, I mean, marriage should be taken very seriously. That being said, we
I've
understand.
discovered a reason why you might want to be a citizen in 2 towns.
Oh, God. All right, well, there's that. So, wow.
I quoted you, and it's out of context. It doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I was waiting for
I
that.
highly recommend marrying real-life family.
Yeah. As soon as you said it, I was like,
Oh, wow. All right. Well, that's going to show up someplace.
Yeah.
I mean, marrying in-game your real-life family from out-of-game. Like, I could marry my wife in-game. In fact, true story, in a MUD that I used to play, I have, my character and my wife actually have wedding rings in the game, which we've had for about 4 years longer than we've actually been married.
Nice.
Because I proposed to my wife in-game before I proposed to her out-of-game.
Nerd.
Yeah. And it was a MUD, too. I got in the late 90s a girl to play a text-only RPG with me. I was super proud of myself. Online.
Yeah.
Women playing games?
Well, it's not that.
So
It's text-only. Back in the late 90s. I mean, we're talking not even late 90s, mid-90s. Like, there was the internet and then me playing MUDs.
Was it Major Mud or what?
No.
What style?
It was an LP MUD.
Nice.
I had to think about that. It was MLR, for what that's worth.
Did you dial in on your
No, I played BBSs
28.8
too.
kbps modem?
14.4.
Sweet.
I did play BBSs
You
too.
did, that's
Exodus
robotics, actually.
and Legend of the Red Dragon and all kinds of those. But anyways, I digress. Back to the question here. You can absolutely escape the marriage if you need to. We understand that this is an online game. Sometimes players get involved on the internet with others, whether or not they're real-life friends or not, and then wish they had not been married in-game for whatever reason. And we don't want to ever put people into a position where they can't play the game because it's just become uncomfortable for them. And so you can separate from, there are divorce mechanics. You can cancel that contract. However, like any contract, there is remuneration. And if it is not a mutually agreed upon separation or cancellation of the contract, then likely somebody is going to end up paying for it. So make sure you go into it knowing what the prenuptial agreement is going to be.
And
Write
be
your
careful
contracts well.
also
Yeah.
if you're Teresk, they take contracts very
Oh,
seriously.
man, yeah.
Getting divorced for a Teresk means that you will actually be branded.
It's like excommunication.
Yeah.
Like,
They
it's just
want,
a violation of
yeah.
all they believe in.
They need to know that you're unsuitable for further contracts.
Right, you're a bad deal at that point.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. If you plan to go into this marrying somebody and then divorcing them, I do not recommend picking somebody who's in the Teresk culture.
They have some other cool benefits though. So
Maybe.
it might be worth it. Like you basically get family secrets.
True.
Which is cool.
John Warren asks, what effect will road quality have on player travel? Will better roads allow for faster travel? If so, does that affect foot traffic as well as mounted and wagon travel? yes, traveling on roads allows you to move more smoothly and more quickly. It may only be a little bit faster, and it may only matter cumulatively over long distances, but you do move faster and more effectively over roads than you do not roads. It also depends on the type of road. So moving over gravel with like a wagon is not as ideal, whereas you're moving over a smoother, like cement type road or something like that, it's going to be a much smoother process. Moving through grass fields is also easier than moving through sand or moving through mud. And we do have animations specifically for trying to push through mud and snow and stuff like that, and they have to like pull their feet out, and it's not fun. It's like snowshoeing.
Creating infrastructure is going to be something that government is going to want to focus on. So
Absolutely.
Where there are well-trodden roads, it's a good idea to turn those into something
Cobblestone and paved roads.
Paved. Obviously, that's going to take a lot of resources, materials. So
Stone
there's
quarries.
jobs for people. And, you know, if you don't maintain them, then they could break down. But if there's a highway of some sort that you need to be able to transport goods on because you want to go to war, or because you want to be a mercantile empire, or whatever reason, transportation is going to be pretty important, and your ability to navigate through those areas is going to be vital.
We have one final question.
Sweet.
You ready for this question?
I am.
All right. Roar asks, with Spatial OS gone now, assuming server processing power is lowered, what original or planned game mechanics design have been changed to accommodate the drop? That kind of works. That's a great question. Actually, it's one that we talked about not too long ago in our exclusive Q&A too. So let me go ahead and provide this more openly, and we'll talk about it a little bit. You know, there seems to be some confusion about what Spatial OS provided to us, and so it's important that as a community that our players understand what that is. So I will try to explain it in a way that is less technical. I may explain it in a technical way as well, but Vi and I actually have two different analogies as to what Spatial OS provided us so that you guys have a better understanding of what it is that we traded. I'm not going to say gave up, but what we traded by not using Spatial OS. But before I do that, first let me underscore and emphasize before I get into my analogy and let Vi try hers. And you guys can let us know which one you think is better. Ultimately, I think hers is better. It's more applicable. But for those who don't have or haven't played tabletop games, you might find mine more easily consumed.
Stop trying to scoop.
Right. No, I'm just saying.
What I'm saying.
All right, so
just go on.
Let's just go on. All right. So before I do, let me point out explicitly that we very much continue to work with Improbable. We're still in conversation with them. They're a great team, great studio. We really do value the work that they've done towards making the industry a better place. Like the technology that they've created as kind of a one-stop shop that allows for these large-scale, distributed, massively multiplayer worlds. It is the future of online gaming. No questions. Like that's, you know, this concept of moving from games into worlds is going to happen. This is what players are looking for, and it's been that way for several years now. So I do not have any doubts that they will continue to be very productive and very successful. And I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of studios that gain great value from having that technology available to them.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the games industry is becoming industrialized. You don't build your own anymore.
Right.
That's stupid.
Right.
Instead, you pull
sugarcoat it, why don't you?
you as a studio now, you just come up with the good ideas, and you find the right game engine, you find the right platform technology, you find the right AI system, you find the right, you know, sound tool for it, and you start combining all of these different elements together that you pulled off the shelf essentially, and assembling them into the game of your vision. And Spatial OS's ability to do that is this huge missing piece that's
Right.
Not currently available off the shelf.
Right.
So it's going to be great. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, that being said, a lot of people are under the assumption that Spatial OS provided us a lot of gameplay mechanics. You know, our AI, I hear that a lot. You know, people saying, like, now that you're not using Spatial OS, you know, how is the AI going to be working and things like that. It's important to understand that Spatial OS is an operating system. It's a platform for developing large-scale multiplayer simulations and worlds. But the gameplay mechanics that define Chronicles of Elyria were always our own to implement. Those were never provided for us. And so whether or not we're talking about our AI, or our body dynamic system, or our combat mechanics, the animals reproducing, the flocking behaviors and migration patterns, you know, all of that stuff. Everything that you've come to know as Chronicles of Elyria are things that we needed to implement either way. It's just whether or not we had a platform in which to run those things on, a system that was scalable. So, my analogy, and then I'll pass it over there. I like to think of Spatial OS and Chronicles of Elyria sort of like I would look at my kitchen, because I like to do cooking metaphors a lot. So as a collective, Spatial OS is kind of like having a kit that provides all of the tools you need to cook. It's got an oven, it's got all of your like pots and pans and all your cookware and maybe Corningware, and it's got storage so that you can keep all your leftovers. It's got everything in one kitchen. It'd be like walking into the super kitchen of your dream and finding everything there. But they don't provide the recipes. They don't provide the ingredients, and ultimately they don't provide what it is that you're making. Like, it's still up to you to cook it. You need to know how long it needs to be in the oven. You need to know what ingredients you need, and then ultimately you're doing the chopping and the baking and all that kind of stuff like that. So with Spatial OS, or with the kitchen the way you want it, you can make some amazing things because they've got all the tools that you need right there. What we've done by moving off of Spatial OS, still recognizing it as a fantastic kitchen, I'll keep the metaphor going, is we actually said, you know what, we're going to actually find our own oven, we're going to get our own cookware, we're going to get our own cutlery, we're going to get our, all of our own things in order to still make the same meal that we were going to make anyways. So it's a different set of tools, but ultimately it doesn't dramatically impact the schedule or kind of our capabilities. We did spend some time last year going around and shopping. Metaphorically speaking, we had to go around and find the oven that we wanted to use and the cutlery and the pots and pans and stuff like that. But having those things now, we can continue on with the cooking process that we were in the middle of before. So I think that's my analogy. So, Vi, what's your analogy? You've got props too, which is not fair.
Yeah,
I totally should have brought some stuff in
you should have
my cookware if I was a caveman.
That's a blacksmithing hammer.
This is not the perfect thing, because I couldn't find our game board.
Wait, you got the ones behind you too.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Couldn't find our game board, but essentially, I don't know who here has played a tabletop role-playing games. Anyone? Frequently, doesn't matter what gaming system you use, but frequently the GM will have a mat that you can write on. You can put your minifigs on. You can put additional models that help describe the scenery that you have, the actual geometry of the dungeon, anything that provides your players the game experience that you want them to have, can be done on this board, no matter the gaming.
Yeah, you could be playing. It's probably going to be thematically similar because you might have coloring and stuff like that. So maybe it's a fantasy game of some kind. Like you might.
Right, but you could use that same mat for something that is not fantasy. It's more dark fantasy horror. Like
you're going very generic. Like
it could be you could be playing werewolf. You could be playing vampire. You could be playing D&D, Pathfinder, or anything.
Call of Duty.
Or Hillfolk that a lot of you haven't heard of, and you should try. You can play any game on it, and that is essentially very much what Spatial OS is. It is the mat. It is the plant that was able to manufacture the mat. It is the shipping containers and the shipping company that were able to bring the mat to the gaming store. It is the gaming store that sold you the mat, and it is the company who makes the pens that you can write on and makes the miniatures and stuff like that. Like, those are all the things that Spatial OS was providing, was the ability for us to assemble and play the game that we want to play. But we're providing the rule book, we're actually running the game experience, like we're bringing the players and we're bringing the GMs to the table so that we can have that gaming experience. So there are, we could make our own game board, and that's what we're essentially having to do. We're providing this place that we can put all of the objects, all of the figures, all of the scenery in order to tell the story that we want to make. But ultimately, and we're choosing the game system and creating the rule book on how to run that particular game. And we lose out on some things. Like our mat might not be as...
It's not going to be a Dwarf Fortress, like 3D model of... I mean, okay, it's 3D models, but for the purpose of the analogy...
It may be a less exquisite map, but it will be a map that, frequently there's a square size and a hex side.
We might not get both.
We might not get both, but we only needed one.
I'm sorry, you don't get hexes.
So essentially, Spatial OS is very much like that mat for tabletop role-playing games, and we're having to make our own mat, but other than that, everything else that was going to go on that mat was still part of the plan, is still part of the plan, and we were always going to have to make and bring to our players in order to play the game.
I think the important thing to underscore there too is that, you know, the time lost there is the time it takes for us to make the mat and to, you know, make the pens and stuff like that. But those are things that we had to do last year. You know, that's one of the reasons why what we've been showing is still a lot, not proof of concept or prototype, like making huge progress. But there are certain systems like the combat system and the crafting system that's, you know, it's a little later than we wanted it to be. But, you know, progress on those is moving forward now. But there was time last year making the mats and, you know, figuring out whether or not we wanted hexes or squares and things like that. So, but that work is done now. I think that's important to underscore too, is that, you know, now we are back to defining the rule book and back to, you know, doing those things. So the cost for that was kind of eaten already.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So we certainly are going to miss working as closely with the guys over at Improbable. Their technology is going to be amazing for the game industry as a whole and for the especially the MMO space, because it's really about building these massive worlds. But
yeah,
we made our own mat.
Yep,
and it's already made. So
so great.
All right, well that was the last question we had, so we're going to start wrapping up. As you heard at the beginning, you know, we've got some great things coming up. Things that are going on right now. During the month of February, we have our account merging system going on right now. So if you had multiple accounts because you bought multiple packages, like let's say you have 2 mayor packages or something like that, and you wanted to be able to combine them in order to get a larger settlement through the benefit of having multiple counties or multiple mayor packages, now is the time to merge those. So you can go onto your account, look under the merge section of your account, be logged in as your primary account, the one that you want to survive, not the one that you want to expire, but the one you want to survive. Go into there, enter in the information for your other secondary accounts one at a time, and you can go through the merge process in order to create kind of one super account. So that's active right now. And that's going on till the end of the month. Because we need to get into the Surname reservation. Yep. Right. So. Similarly, if you don't have multiple packages, but for whatever reason you wanted to, so let's say you wanted to have multiple counties or something like that, then you can still do that, but it's important to note you'll only be able to do that until the end of February. At that point, while people will still be able to claim multiple packages if they have bought them, or they'll be able to receive titles from other people, they will not be able to purchase a second package on their account or merge anymore. So if you have 2 accounts at that point, they have to remain separate accounts. So February is the month to finish up purchasing any of those accounts that you wanted or any of those packages. You'll still be able to upgrade after February and be able to bind titles, but you won't be able to merge them like this. So definitely get that done in February. Beginning of March, we've got user surname reservation coming up. That's super exciting because now people will start to get their family names claimed, and then of course we'll be transitioning into personas after that. We are working on our release 2 right now. Release 3, 030, 030 Alpha 1 is something we'll be working on going on starting in like the next month or so, and that one's important because that's our release 3, which is our walk and talk milestone, and that is the first milestone that upon completion players in our Alpha 1 cohort will actually be able to get into Vox Elyria or into Chronicles of Elyria and be playing with us using the Voxel client that we've created. Yep, so not just friends and family. Not friends and family, everybody in the Alpha 1 cohort. Yes. We will after that start gradually rolling that out to a larger audience, but it's important to understand that the Voxel client is really there to help us validate features and gameplay in an exclusive way. So at some point it'll be accessible to everyone who has a paid account, but for a very long time it'll be Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 only, and those are NDAs. So if you want to be able to get in and access the Voxel client in order to kind of experience COE at the earliest possible point, and I'm talking bare bones, because we're giving it to the players in Alpha as early as we can so that the feedback that they give us, we have as actionable feedback. You know, we don't have to wait until the game is done. It's too late at that point. We want them to be giving us this feedback as early as we possibly can, and this is really it. So if you want access to that, make sure you have a package that has Alpha 1 access or higher, or you can now go online into our store and purchase the Alpha 1 access a la carte, which then also gives you access to that, as well as all the different phases of development after that. So that's another thing that we've got going on. Also, we just announced our Illyria and Chill event. So in February, from yesterday until I think the 19th of February, we do have some items, some store items, some virtual items. They're in-game items that you can take advantage of and purchase in our online store. They're designed to be fun. They're not super serious. It's also important to note that all these items are craftable in-game, so people who purchase them now are really doing so to have them available to them on launch, as well as to help support the studio. We are still a crowdfunded studio at this point, so all the things that people purchase in our online store goes directly to the development of the game, making sure that all the employees here stay employed and are able to continue to bring you guys an awesome game and an awesome experience. So if you want to help support us, or for some reason you want a chainmail bikini and cat of nine tails, then
chainmail briefs.
Chainmail briefs, sorry. Chainmail briefs and bikini.
And bikini.
Because the brief is unisex. I mean, technically anybody can wear it. Although it's chainmail, so you may or may not want to make that gender explicit. I don't know. Anyway, if you're interested in that, or a picnic basket with recipes and some yummy desserts like chocolate truffles and things like that, then head on out to our store. You can pick those up. Other than that, we look forward to getting you guys into the Voxel client as soon as we possibly can. Vi's got her production update that will be coming up in the next soon period. Do that. I don't know when it'll be done, but as our release 2 closes out, obviously we'll have more videos for you guys so that you can see what's gone on since our mid-release update, or kind of in-release update until the very end, which is going to focus heavily on kind of the character creation process, as well as kind of some equipment and inventory type things are some of the things that we're working on right now. So very excited to have you guys see that stuff. Very excited to be showing you guys more stuff. If you haven't noticed yet, every Friday we've been trying to release a little bit of something for you guys to look at. So make sure you check in regularly on Fridays to see whether or not we've got any additional screenshots or leaks for you guys. I do know we have one planned for this Friday.
It's going to be epic, too.
I'm enjoying this one. So make sure to stop by and check out all the forums. And if you haven't already, make sure to join our Discord. Our Discord is discord.gg/Chronicles of Elyria, discordapp.gg/Chronicles of Elyria. So we are an official Discord partner, so we got that cool little vanity URL. So make sure you come check us out.
Because Caspian likes to share other things there all the time.
Yep.
It's true.
If you want to have
a faucet when it comes to leaking stuff.
Yeah, he's a leaky faucet. If you want leaks, just wait for Caspian to show us in Discord.
It's true. As usual, the staff here really appreciates you guys taking the time during your day to come and listen to our live Q&A. We also really appreciate the time you guys took to ask questions and be here listening to the answers.
And upvote them.
And upvote them, yeah. And so last thing is that several of us will, at our discretion, be online after this answering questions. We've got a busy day ahead of us, so we won't be able to be in Discord for a long period of time, but myself and probably Maxwell will be inside of Discord after this. So if you have additional questions for us, please don't inundate us, but we will be there to kind of continue the conversations on some of these topics. So that's all for this Q&A, guys. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to the next Q&A. Whether it's open or topical, we don't know yet, but as soon as we know what the topic is going to be, we'll let you guys know. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.